What's going on, guys? Illumignostic, and welcome to Sunday Night AMA. Kind of got a head cold, and the neighbors are draining the internet, so I don't know how this is going to go, but I thought I would pop on and try to answer some questions if you guys have any, and then there are some questions that have just been posed in the community and some updates about some interesting stuff going on. Let me know if the lag is really bad, and maybe I can try again at like 10 o'clock or something when more people have gone to bed. Definitely getting lots of warning messages, but let me know if it's bad so that I don't waste my time talking to myself here. Actually, there goes everyone already according to the little number counter there. See, yeah, you're still up, but so at any rate, tomorrow, the other night, some Bora people came by and they gave us a bunch of really nice gifts and invited us to come out to their community tomorrow. So we're going out there to talk about the local legends. I hear there's a ton of legends. I'm particularly interested in these legends of this giant anaconda that has supposedly a head like a deer and big ears, and it's apparently quite a nasty creature. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to go out to this community. I'm a little bit disappointed that I'm going to be sick for that, but we're making it happen. And then I want to let you guys know as well, this is a great time to become a patron or to support us via one of the addresses in the chat, because we are also trying to arrange a trip down to the deep jungle Bora that don't have really a lot of contact with the outside world and are still living traditionally, so that I can interview them and try to preserve some of that knowledge. But we have to raise quite a bit of money to make that possible. And then also, I want to let you guys know that I am in the process of editing a lot of my live streams and putting them up as videos, partly because I looked at my analytics, and out of 300 people that watched the live stream, 15 of them are unsubscribed. So way more people watch the videos. So partly for that, but also because sometimes I can be a little bit incoherent, and I'm well aware of it. Things will skip around too much. And if I can go in and kind of, edit it all together so it flows better, it makes for a much more coherent experience. And also I'm going to add visuals and flesh things out a bit more, so there'll be added content. Even if you saw the live stream, there may be something of value for you in there. And I did have a couple of things in mind, I guess, for this. I can't remember what they were. Okay, so somebody asked me about Peru, life in Peru versus Ecuador. And everything is a trade-off. The law of compensation in the universe applies to all systems. So anytime that you make a gain in one area, you're going to have a deficit in another area. And that's definitely the case with Peru. The internet is worse. There's a lot less modern conveniences. The cities are incredibly loud. The jungle is loud. Everything is loud all the time. No one cares when it's loud. It can be 6 o'clock in the morning. Suddenly there's booming bass. It can be 2 in the morning and it's quiet. And then all of a sudden there's booming bass in the jungle. And so, the people are a lot less formal and a lot less, like in the cities in Ecuador, people can be kind of snotty, and it's kind of a holdover from the old pecking order, which was like white people and then mestizos, and then the indigenous are on the bottom. So there's a lot of, I think, like animosity and like residual tension from the past, where, white people just tend to have fallen out of favor in a lot of places. It's kind of funny in the United States. The right likes to whine a lot about how white people are just treated so badly these days, but a little bit of education and history, and it's really not hard to understand where that momentum came from and how we ended up on that trajectory. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's not a mystery exactly to me. But I mean, there are a lot of upsides of Peru too. I find it a lot more interesting. The jungle is much more intact. All of the animals, not all of the animals, but the overwhelming majority of the jungle species that exist still are around. Unfortunately, we see ocelot skins and stuff at the market for sale, like casually for sale. The endangered species are just piled up. There are markets where you can buy tapir meat and stuff. That's also really alarming to me. A lot of the animals that were actually considered to be common in the rainforest just a few years ago are now endangered. Pretty much all of them. I just found out the other day that there's only 250 wild spider monkeys left in the entire world. In the wild. In the entire Amazon rainforest. And that's crazy. I mean, when I was a kid and you'd watch documentaries about the Amazon rainforest, spider monkeys were one of the really common things that you would just see everywhere. And that is apparently no longer the case. And then tapirs, used to be a super common animal that were just everywhere. And I guess they're endangered now as well. So it really does seem to be that the Amazon rainforest is just literally disappearing. I mean, everyone knows that, but I think the sort of like critical level that we've reached is not as commonly understood. It's pretty alarming. It's pretty alarming. In fact, the monkey video that I just published that was completely ridiculous with my partner and I giggling at its balls like a couple of teenagers or whatever. That thing is almost gone, I guess. It's like one of the last 25 of them or something. So, it's really crazy to realize how fast this is happening, how rapidly the rainforest is disappearing. No, I don't know anything about this fella that you're mentioning. I've never heard of him. But I got to look at my my title to see what it is that I was supposed to be talking about, because I honestly don't remember. How's the quality of the stream, you guys? Let me know if it's working all right. And I really am. I know I've been saying I'm not going to do any more during like prime time anymore because of this. But I'm serious now. The streams are going to start happening at really weird times in the middle of the day, in the morning, and really late at night, because I'm just tired of having problems with it. Okay, that was it. Visiting the Bora tribe, life in Peru. It's really nice to sort of feel isolated for me. I think for a lot of people that would be less desirable. But when I go into a town or a mall or a city or anywhere where there are a lot of normal people, it's extremely uncomfortable for me. I don't like it at all. I don't think my partner really likes it. So we like to be just far away from it, where we don't even have to think about it. And the mentality of people out here in the jungle, some of the girls, it seems like, particularly in their mid-20s or so, they're just so warm that it's almost uncomfortable. Such bright, like deep, uncomplicated smiles. And, just a couple of times we've just been greeted so warmly that it's almost like disconcerting or something. Yeah, well, the audio, the visual is going to be a little bit sluggish because I put it on ultra low latency, thinking that it would be best to have smooth audio. I have to choose one or the other, I guess, at the moment. All right, so let's see, what else about Peru? I mean, when we get water, we actually we have these big buckets, just like buckets with, a spout. And the guys come and they pour the bucket out of one bucket into our buckets. And then we bring it in the house. We have running water, but it's definitely not potable. But they don't even deliver, like in Ecuador, you would go to the store and you would get like a big 2-gallon bottle, and bring it home. And they don't even do that. They just bring the water bottle, pour it in your bucket, and then take off in their tuk-tuks. Yeah, you see a lot of really ridiculous things too. You have to get used to also knowing there's a different standard of hygiene. It was the same in Ecuador, but it's even more extreme here. Like you see things that you're kind of like, damn, like people, there's like, meat out and they're like slapping flies with fly swatters on the meat. And, like there's this weird thing that people do where they slap meat, like when you're going to buy it. And if you like buy bread, they don't use gloves or anything. Usually they'll just grab it and put it in the bag. But you have to understand, in indigenous communities, everyone, it was a small group of relatively healthy people. If there are no outsiders bringing diseases in. And so, there's just no reason to think like that. And honestly, I never really let it bother me that much. You just kind of get something like travel sickness for a week or so, until your body adjusts to the bacteria and whatnot. And then, it's just welcome to real life, And I don't really, the whole thing of like modern comfort and security and stuff, I've never really believed in it. I feel like it's an illusion. And when people say, like how can you live so far away from a hospital with a toddler? I just kind of cringe. Like, you really live your life with that kind of just general cowardice as a rule? Like you're on a rock in outer space with jaguars and black widow spiders and Bloods and Crips and, nuclear bombs and shit. Like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? I just can't think like that. So, the modern convenience thing doesn't really, and comfort and security, I've just never believed in it. I've always lived in a situation where, I literally lived in neighborhoods where the cops weren't coming if you called them when I was a kid. They were just like, I'm sorry, sir, you're breaking up, click, they're not coming. They're just not coming. So maybe, I was just kind of conditioned to not have that. But I honestly do think that the way people have become so dependent upon the Matrix is not healthy or sane. It's beyond neurotic, live your goddamn life, get out there and live your life, be free, I would rather die free than, having the illusion of a little bit more security or whatever, a little bit more safety. We don't have cops here either. There's a security guard that hangs out down by one of the stores. There's no cops. There are no cops. I can't call the cops. If somebody came to rob us, I have that pit bull right there. Luna. Hey, Luna, say hi. Hi. You know what I mean? I have that pit bull and, I got straps that blow the wall out, clear them all out like atomic fallout. And that's it, just kidding about the guns. We don't have any guns. Not that I wouldn't have guns. I just don't have guns because I don't know if you're even allowed to in this country or whatever. They have guns. The indigenous definitely have guns. You hear them shooting animals all the time. You know what I mean, though? That old Ben Franklin thing about security or freedom, I would definitely take the freedom in a heartbeat. You just have to trust your destiny and your fate, which might just actually bring us to one of our first questions. I try to find the questions in the comments that are either kind of like troll or potentially embarrassing, because I don't know. I kind of feel compelled to put myself on the spot if I'm going to bother to do something as pretentious as an AMA. But, it's also not pretentious. It feels pretentious when I'm the subject of it, I guess. But somebody somebody said something about how, and I don't really like the way this came out, but I did the higher self stream the other day, and it was hit or miss. I was really scatterbrained, and I noticed at one point I said psychedelics are a great tool for bridging the subconscious and conscious mind, which is really how magic happens. That's how consciousness is expanded. That's how we become less automatic. You're building a bridge between the conscious and subconscious mind and integrating them. This is how you become a whole being, and when you become a whole being, then you have some ability to control and direct you have the ability to align yourself with destiny, I guess. Control and direct, I'm less sure about as I get older. But I guess I said that. I said, psychedelics are a great tool, and then I was like, in fact, Carl Jung was a excellent dispenser of higher it just went a completely just whacked out direction, unconnected. So anyways, I'm editing that and reposting it as in a coherent form. And I'm also kind of dodging this question, I guess, but I said something about how, I feel like I'm not necessarily like a genius, all the time. I'm definitely can be a complete, dumbass, just as much as anybody else. But I definitely have moments that I think qualify as genius. And somebody kind of was like, well, what the fuck do you mean by that? And that's totally fair. And I actually didn't spend as much time explaining what I think genius is in that live stream. So here's my web redemption, I guess. I think what I meant by that, really, you could even just call it like intuitive reasoning, which I think is really the source of what we often label as genius. The two possibilities that I entertain is that even for a person that doesn't have an IQ of 200 or 150 even, there are moments of like transcendental thinking or leaps of creativity or ingenuity that are not consistent with the general or the, fundamental, the baseline personality, right? And there's also evidence that is due to the filtration system in our nervous system being deactivated, especially if you consider that sometimes traumatic brain injury actually apparently induces genius in people. And to me, that's almost like when you smack the TV and it makes it like get better reception, I think you're just knocking a part of the filter out. And, there was a guy I just saw like a year ago on YouTube that dove into a pool or something and hit his head and cracked it open, and then he could play piano. But not only could he play piano, he could just play Mozart from off the top of his head or whatever. And it's also interesting to me to watch how the normie demographic, I guess, kind of very effectively dodges all of the obvious questions like, where is that coming from? Did this plumber even listen to Mozart before he hit his head? Like, where is this shit even coming from? I did this with ChatGPT earlier too. That was interesting. And I'll talk about that in a minute because it's worthy for sure. But yeah, so what I mean, I'll give you an example. Like the other day, I said something about how consciousness arises from the interaction of the two opposing poles of the electromagnetic wave, which is something that, mystics and different religious systems have been saying, it's all throughout all of it. I don't need to tell you that even, it. It may not have dawned on you the real significance of it, but pretty ubiquitous. And so, that statement came from intuitive reasoning because I didn't even know that electromagnetic waves have poles. I had not studied that. I just, it's just like intuitive reasoning, and it's correct. And one pole is electric and the other is magnetic. And I believe the way I phrased it was that they were opposite. And that could be taken to mean positive and negative. Still correct. Because the electric is positive and the magnetic is negative, in the sense that the one is inward drawing and the other is, positive. It's pushing, if that makes sense. So, there are a lot of those instances of sort of this intuitive reasoning, and then I look online and discover that it's correct, consistently. And so when I think of genius, I'm not necessarily thinking of like the world-changing revolutionary ideas in physics necessarily, although that can count. I'm talking about, intuitive reasoning and the reception of information on a consistent basis through non-ordinary means, and, insights that are of a non-ordinary nature that actually have substance and that sort of thing, And I don't think of genius necessarily as something that someone is. It's something that we have access to. And if you are a magician or a spiritual seeker or, something along those lines falling into that category, however and wherever and whenever, your objective basically is to become more consistent in your ability to receive and articulate or create in whatever medium you're working with that sort of intuitive reasoning. So if you thought I was being cocky by saying that I have moments of genius, I think I just might mean something different when I say genius than a lot of people think. So. Yes, and by the way, thank you, Alpha Draconian, for joining the Patreon. It definitely helps. You guys that are patrons and you want to have your screen time, you have to contact me. All you have to do is go into the messages and send me a message, and we can schedule your talk. All right, so I'm not seeing a ton of questions in the chat. Somebody mentioned lightning strikes. I got hit by lightning like 2 years ago. I don't know that I would recommend it. Would you say you're a Gnostic? No, actually. I definitely do not subscribe to any kind of faith or religion or doctrine or ideology. I have picked through most of them pretty thoroughly over the decades, and I found the bits and pieces that meet certain criteria. And it's not like I hold them all up to the criteria bit by bit or whatever. It's not really like that. You just kind of intuitively have a system, I guess, if you're me. Or any scientific illuminist. I guess if I was going to say that I was something, I would say scientific illuminism, which is basically the protocol of the Illuminati, the real Illuminati, the original Bavarian Illuminati. I don't know if this weird thing in Hollywood is real. I'm sure it is, but it's not the original Illuminati, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the original Illuminati. And the only reason that they call it that is to keep you from looking into the actual Illuminati, because it's really powerful, basic, easy to understand. Scientific Illuminism is the key to the gate of the mysteries. And, it's just extremely Orwellian, the way that they have sort of engineered the cultural narrative around that to deter people. The same is true of Freemasonry. But no, I'm definitely not a Gnostic. I don't believe in archons. I don't believe in entities, really. I mean, it's not that I don't believe in them exactly, but I think that our definition of real has to be a bit more malleable. I'm very weary of allowing spirituality to turn into some kind of fairy tale, an escapism thing. That sort of mentality also fosters a lot of ego, and we have to be extremely careful as seekers to look out for spiritual bypassing, because the brain is an incredibly slippery, devious creature. It's almost the devil, In fact, the Luciferian current is basically just the intellectual, unmitigated or unregulated by the heart and the soul. Sorry, I'm kind of sick. From the point of view of critics. So it is quite literally the devil. In fact, in the Garden of Eden, you guys know that story, that in a Garden of Eden, baby, that guy was drunk, and the actual line is in the Garden of Eden, baby. What was I saying about? Oh yeah, the snake. That's supposed to be the devil. It never equates the snake with the devil. But you notice that, Jehovah says, well, Elohim actually is the name that's being used at the time, which is a masculine form of a feminine plurality. So it's like a group. This group of androgynous beings or whatever it is tells them, you must remain in ignorance. And if you, want to know as Elohim knows, eat of that plant, but don't, because verily thou shalt die. And the serpent is like, nah, verily thou shalt not die, and thou shalt know as Elohim knows. And who told the truth? The serpent told the truth. But again, the association with knowledge and Lucifer, the devil, is pretty blatant. So I almost don't remember how I got on that. The whole thing of beings and archons and stuff. That's not my trip. Spiritual bypassing, that's where I was going with that. It seems to me that most of the sort of fairy tale, myth-based religious mythos sort of things are designed to facilitate spiritual bypassing. And, that is like one of the number one enemies of the spiritual seeker. I think that's where I was going with that. I'll have to rewatch this and see if I just did one of those timeline jumping things that yeah, so for me, and then I was talking about real versus, the malleability of the idea of real too, right? So, I had this experience with this shamana. Most of you probably heard the story of Maestra Juanita a little while back. And of course, I've had plenty of experiences with entities. But if, Maestra Juanita is to be believed, here is a person from, Shipibo culture. Never met her before in my life. Never worked with Shipibo people even. The only place in Peru I'd ever been was Mancora, and never anywhere near the Peruvian jungle before, 3 weeks ago or whatever. And I had this experience where there were these tentacled beings all over me. And I kind of didn't like some of them. And so I asked her about it because this is something I've never made my mind up about. What are these things? Not just those tentacled beings, but what are all of them? What the fuck are DMT entities? What are they? Why do they seem like AI, first of all? Because that kind of suggests they aren't real, or that they're sort of like automatic or something. They're like the universe's subconscious or some kind of archetypal program that we can sort of interact with, but it's not quite all there or something. I mean, you guys know if you've ever met DMT entities. I'm not saying there's never lucid exchanges, but, it's also just a lot of just weird bullshit that doesn't make any sense. And you know what I mean? It's a very strange thing. It doesn't help that they so often offer like true information that no one could have. I mean, probably the best example of that was a time that a mantis told me that a specific relative by name who I had not asked for anything, and there were no warning, you know, I wasn't like, help us, we're in trouble or anything at all. Nothing. No plea for help, nothing. No reason for this. And she'd never done this before. You know, it's not like she just does this or something. And the being was like, you know, this person just sent you $1,000. And as soon as the vision disappeared, my phone beeped, and it was that person saying, hey, I just want to let you know, I just sent you $1,000. Right. And I've got, you know, 24 of those stories. So, you know, that kind of, for me at least, having experienced it so many times, that really sort of ups the ante in terms of like what it is that we could possibly be dealing with in that domain. And so, so these beings, you know, slurping on me, and then the shaman's in front of me, and she does this, shamana, excuse me. She does this cleansing Ikaro with all of these gestures of like, you know, get this idea out of here, and like having conversations that were obviously like with this shadow part of me or something, like, oh yeah, you think all that shitty stuff about, you know, she kind of looked like she was thinking about it, and then she would like respond like, get out of here. And it was really insane. And when it was over, all those beings were gone, and there's like this perfectly clear vision of like an angel with a heart floating in the clouds or whatever. And I still feel better. You know, it changed me permanently. That Ikaro changed me permanently. And so, you know, I asked her, what are they always there? Like, what the fuck are those things, you know? And she's like, no. I called them to come and slurp all the energy out of you. So when you were the bad energy, so when you felt those, you know, the ones that you felt were bad, it's because they were connecting to these bad parts and slurping them up and hosing them off away, you know, hosing them up and taking them off. And of course, I have a lot of issues with that answer, you know. I've seen those beings before, those exact same ones. Who called them that time? You know, I was alone. I called them, I guess, and just didn't know it. I mean, you know, and I'm not saying she's not telling the truth. I'm just saying that, you know, that doesn't really, it's not totally satisfactory, although it is interesting, you know. I mean, we have to admit that the possibility that she was just kind of had no idea what they were and was just saying that to feed into the perception, you know, it's definitely there. I mean, I don't get that read from her, and the cleansing was so powerful that it permanently changed my life. I don't really know if you can be like that and do things like that. I kind of don't think so. But, you know, we have to be realistic and consider all the possibilities. You know, so the point is that I guess at this juncture, if something can perform a function that is independent of us, that has a consequence, it's real, right? So I guess I basically just came to the conclusion right now that these things are real. I mean, they're real, as Robert Anton Wilson said. He said, you know, the demons in Aleister Crowley's magic are real, but they're not real in the way that the IRS is real. But then again, Aleister Crowley himself said the demons of the Goetia are just parts of our mind. They're just parts of the subconscious. In fact, he was placed number 43 on the list of the most important Britons of all time for mapping hitherto unknown parts of the human consciousness. Not for casting spells or, you know, that's one of the weirdest goddamn things I've ever heard too, that the crown was like, you know, Crowley really did, you know, figure out some shit about consciousness. We ought to make him a fucking saint for that or whatever, you know. It's trippy. Hold on, guys. I have to blow my nose. I'm going to drown. Such a strange life that I live. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I just, you know, I was thinking as I went outside to blow my nose that there's a couple of, tribal elders coming over here to pick us up tomorrow, to take us, walking way out into the jungle to some village. And, I was just thinking, man, it sucks that I'm sick. And then it just hit me that that's actually what we're doing tomorrow, It's really just remarkable circumstances, I guess, to be in. But yeah, that's what I'm saying about this stuff. I don't think there's any way to really come to an absolute conclusion about much of anything. So I guess the short answer to your question is if I'm a Gnostic is that I'm more like an agnostic, because there's no way to know, People say like, oh yeah, I died and I had a near-death experience and I went to heaven and all this shit. It's like, wait, you were unconscious and you had a dream and that's supposed to mean something? I mean, it just, like, when did we lose the connection of like what it means to have a subjective experience? It means that it's in your imagination, basically. It doesn't mean anything. That you heard Jesus's voice in your head, or, you know it's true, when the Muslim also equally is convinced, probably more so, because, the Muslim extremist, at least, is willing to blow himself up. He's so convinced that he's going to heaven for it, and your average Christian is not going to do that shit. So, you know what I mean? Like, they're even more convinced than you are. So how do you not put two and two together and realize that neither one of you know anything? That's the obvious conclusion there. So I guess I just am too aware of that to really commit to any belief about anything. I mean, you believe this table is here? It's not. It's mostly empty space. It's quarks and gluons and even, frozen photons and shit. It's a bunch of bosons holding, or being held together by the weak force and the strong force and other things that we can't really even define, and then damn, man, if that's thunder, the stream isn't going to last much longer, because that lasted almost still rumbling. I guess that's what rolling thunder is. Man, why are we losing the audience? I thought this was a pretty solid rant tonight. Hey, you guys. By the way, you guys, please support the channel. Otherwise, it will go away. All of you guys that recently have supported, I appreciate from the bottom of our heart. But I really want to make this trip to the deep jungle happen. But I'm not in a position to spend money on the channel that doesn't come from the channel. So it's got to fund itself, or it's just not going to happen. Oh, but another thing I was saying about agnostic, when it comes to even like ideas like reincarnation, I knew all kinds of shit about Aleister Crowley's works. I had the same thoughts that I found in his books when I was older. As a child, a lot of them, the same metaphysical ideas. It doesn't even make sense that a 6-year-old is thinking that way. I had the same habits. I wore a smoking jacket and smoked Perique tobacco and made my eggs the same way and my coffee the same way and went through this whole ritual with all of those things in the morning exactly like he did. It doesn't mean, and I also did a bunch of the same stuff, like exactly the same stories. But it doesn't mean anything, really, because you could have a common ancestor and then you can remember, you have genetic memory, or there could be a Akashic record type affair where you're downloading information. It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. No matter what you experience, no matter what goes through your head, you don't know anything, period. I don't know why that's so hard for people, And the fact that people just think, well, if I believe it in my heart, then no, you dumbass, that's not even healthy. Follow your heart is terrible fucking advice. Good advice is to balance the pentagram. That's the good advice. Figure out how to use your head and your heart. Most people cannot do that. Most people are either all head or all heart. So, you just got to get used to the fact that you just don't know shit and you're never going to, really. You can have a bunch of ideas and you can come up with, hypotheticals that are compelling. Like, the universe does not seem to possibly have been a random accident. That just, I'm not even going to go into why I would say that, but come on. At the same time, the fairy tale God of the Bible is obviously fucking completely insane and imaginary. You can get that far, and that's far enough, I think. Getting much further than that, and then you're just making shit up. When people start talking about archons and things, that it doesn't matter how you perceive something, it doesn't matter what you perceived, you don't know that you don't know. You just don't know whether it was just your imagination or if you had a psychotic break or whatever. You don't know. So, and anyone else that says anything about anything, you don't know if it's real or not. That's just reality, But yeah, the reincarnation thing is a great example of how, it doesn't matter. You can remember every goddamn detail of an entire life, find that person's diary like I basically did, and then still you don't know that it's true. Because there are all these other explanations for how that could have happened, And that's knowledge, paradoxically. The only real knowledge is to know that you don't know jack shit and you're just never going to. But, there are layers and there are levels. So, we can definitely tune into things and we can have a deeper understanding and a more profound kind of interaction with the universe than just a sort of, muggle kind of existence. And it's kind of necessary to play along with certain possibilities at times as if they're real in order to facilitate certain experiences. In the beginning of Magic in Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley. He says, this is the book of spells and Sephiroth and angels. Lost the stream. Did I just see someone with the name Andrew Tate pop into the chat? Yeah, looks like. Oh no, we're still barely live. Oh no, Anthony Tokar. So, if you guys brought your questions, it is supposed to be an AMA. It's funny, man. You guys always do this to me. There's all these questions when I'm trying to just tell a story and I don't want to be interrupted, and then I end up checking the chat and forgetting what I'm talking about. And then I try to do an AMA and nobody has anything. Every time, man. But then I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain that this doesn't mean that there are no genuine insights into any things of a spiritual nature, I just think it's kind of counterproductive to allow yourself to collapse the probability wave into, a singularity, because all you're really doing is reducing possibilities and you're not getting any closer to truth, Thoughts on joining Freemasonry? I wish that I had not left the lodge when I did. I'm thinking at this point it was probably the biggest possible mistake that I've ever made. In fact, I should probably go to keto and explain what happened and see if I can get reinstated. I'm sure I could, and I don't think it would be a problem. But it's absolutely a good idea. It's just that you kind of have to know that most of them don't know what it is. And they're not fun, most of them. I mean, you probably heard my story of what happened, but for those of you that haven't heard it, it's interesting enough, I guess. I somehow found out that Masons had dinners, and that's kind of where they like prospect people. So I went to one of the dinners, and no, maybe that's not the first thing that happened. Maybe I don't know how I ended up having lunch with this 32nd degree Mason that was the master of the temple there. I don't remember how that happened, honestly. I don't know what order things went, you know. But I either applied or I just rang the doorbell and he answered or something and was like, why don't we have lunch first, you know? So we went to lunch and he starts asking me questions, you know, like, do you have a criminal record? I was like, yeah. And he goes, yeah, that doesn't matter. I have one too. And he's an ex-cop. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're a 32nd degree Mason and an ex-cop with a criminal record? Like, what is really going on in the world? You know, and then he would be obviously like really evasive about my questions. You know, I was like, so isn't it really like an occult organization? And he said, well, you know, everything's occult, isn't it? And that was a pretty gangster answer. You know, that's exactly pretty much what I would have said. I mean, because, you know, all magic is, you know, causing change to occur in conformity with will. And so every act is a magical act. And then every act of, you know, a dog or a cat or an electron or a quark or a photon or, you know what I mean? It's all magic in a sense. So that was a really good answer. And so then he invited me to the lodge, and I noticed that all these guys were like redneck, like business owner types. They were not like, you know, I wouldn't want to hang out with them. You know, they were super like, you know, old school and just like dry and rednecky and weird. And I would say things and then they would answer in ways that I knew were incorrect. You know, I said something about Christian lodges, and one of them, he just glared at me and he's like, they're all Christian lodges. And I'm like, that's bullshit. They're not. Like, what is up with this, you know? And then I went over to the glass case where they kept all like the Masonic artifacts in the temple. And the 32nd degree guy, the cop, came over. The cop came over and I asked him, you know, basically, can I just explain to you like what I think is going on with this, you know? And he's like, yeah. And so I did. I told him what I really thought Masonry was and where it came from and what it was doing. And after like a minute and a half, and my girlfriend was standing there, I was surprised that he did this in front of her. But he's just like, all right. You know more about this than any of these other men in this temple. And then I looked around and I realized they're all 3rd degree Master Masons except for him. He's the only guy in here that's above the 3rd degree, the only one, you know? And that's when I realized that it is actually true that below the 3rd degree, they don't have a fucking clue. They don't have a clue. They think it's a Christian civic organization that does charity, and that's not untrue. But there's way fucking more to the story than that. And if you look at the degrees of, you know, the way that it works in Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma, you can see that there's this very slow but steady and deliberate effort at tearing down their Christian beliefs like a little bit at a time so that, you know, it doesn't trigger them to like flee or, you know, have an adverse reaction to this deconditioning process. And that's ultimately what it is. You know, if you guys are patrons and you watch my Degree 28, that's when it really starts to become obvious that that's what's happening. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, one of the main reasons that I really regret leaving is that it really, like, they give you a card when you join that explains to you that the first duty of a Mason is to take care of other Masons and that they are super powerful and have connections all over the world. So, you know, another question that I get a lot and saw in the comments is that, when I started this channel, one of the main themes of it was that if you align yourself with your ultimate purpose, and if that purpose, especially if that purpose happens to be consistent with like the greater good, you'll find yourself supported in ways that are remarkable. And then, I've had all these struggles over the last 4 years or so. But my response to that is that that's not natural. 100% of that is because of the COVID, whatever. You know what I mean? All of it was done by that very unnatural mechanism of control. It worked, and it honestly was directly targeting people like me in a sense. So, what I'm saying though is that had I maintained my lodge dues, I would never have had a problem with any of this. So, they will definitely give you access to information that you don't have access to now. And it is important that this process is directed a little bit. When I went through the most accelerated part of my process, I didn't have anyone to tell me anything. And, I realize now that it probably could have saved me a lot of hassle if there had been someone that I respected that had wisdom that could check me at times and slow me down a little bit and put the governor on, So there's a lot of reasons to join the Masons, and everything that you have been told that is negative, almost all of it is a lie. A deliberate misinformation campaign intended to disempower people by discouraging them from getting power. That's what disempowering is. It's facts. And I'm not saying there aren't bad apples. In fact, there's the Black Lodge, White Lodge, there's white hats and black hats. That's all real. The brothers of the left-hand path, the brothers of the right-hand path. The relationship is much more complex and bizarre than most people can even handle understanding, the necessity of these things. That's one of the reasons for the secrecy. Most people, it's cliche to say, but most people can't handle the truth. That's facts. That is all the way facts. If I fucking told you about all that has gone down, it would burn off both your ears. It's a wild world. And it's constructed along some really extreme lines because it has to be, and that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, people are always telling me to debate people, but no one will touch me with a 10-foot pole. I'm not sure exactly what it is, because there are cringier people, there are dumber people, there are all sorts of, I don't get it, but I cannot get anyone to interview or collaborate. Nothing, man. Nobody wants anything to do with me. I'm so far. I've hit up a bunch of people and no one ever responds. So, some of you guys have told me to go debate people and stuff, and I've hit them up and they're like, just ignore me. Just straight up ignore me. So I don't know, man. I don't know. I'm down, if it's not a waste of my time, I'll do it. But so far, no one's taken the bait. Yeah, the link for the Discord is in the video description. The link for the Patreon is in the video description. The PayPal, Zelle, and cryptocurrency addresses and all that stuff. I'm trying to raise probably $1,500 to go downriver to the Boris, where they're living totally, traditional clothing and no electricity and the whole thing, thatch huts. And apparently there's very rich folklore in this area. And I can imagine why. When you go out on that river and realize how fucking big it actually is, there's no question that there's things out there that we don't know about. There's no way. It's all dark too. If you go down into the Amazon River with, scuba gear, guess what you're going to see? Dick. Not even dick. Nothing. You're going to see jack shit. Why do you think you've never seen it on the Discovery Channel? You can't do it. We have no clue what's in that river. You know, we were coming home. We live on a tributary of the Amazon. I mean, it's right there. I can almost hit it with a rock. I mean, well, if I had a cannon, I could hit it with a rock. It's not far from me. And we're in this little river, and a 400-pound pink dolphin is just all of a sudden like arching up out of the, you know, there are manatees, there are bull sharks in there, there are catfish the size of Volkswagens, you know, there are 30-foot fucking anacondas. I mean, you know, there's shit out in that jungle for sure. And I found out a little while back that the unexplored area of the Amazon is actually bigger than India. It's not like all in one place, you know, but the cumulative unexplored areas bigger than India. So, you know, that's one of the things I've kind of become interested in is all these weird stories. I actually just sold a shirt for the Shipibo. By the way, we have all kinds of that sort of stuff for sale on our website at junglenosis.com, along with ayahuasca, cielo, chacruna, all kinds of, you know, things and stuff. Please check local laws, though. Definitely don't want to do anything that you shouldn't. Ever. Behave, kids. Here, look, I'll show you guys. This ceremonial thingy, the fabric is from a palm. These seeds are from, I don't know what they call it here, but in Ecuador it was San Pedro Pepa de San Pedro. And then these little brown ones are ayahuasca seeds. And then these are scales from a gigantic fish called a paiche that oh, here too. This is the Bora headdress. Oh, macaw feathers. It's not really made to fit the gringo dome. Yeah, but it like locks on because you know you got to dance around with the spear tapping the ground. And I learned to do some Shuar dance a few years ago, and man, it was so exhausting. Just a few minutes of it was like, you know, I guess I'm getting old, but Jesus. So anyways, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, the paiche is a fish that can get up to like 15 feet long, and they haven't evolved in 500 million years. And they have like this, like, it's a fin, I guess, but it's like the entire length of its back, and it sort of refracts light like a crystal when it, you know, so it has like this oil slick kind of look. So yeah, I still haven't seen any AMA questions. I don't know what Tartaria or the orphan trains are. No, I haven't had any more interactions. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, I see her sometimes. We go there to ship clothing and stuff. I mean, I haven't had any more ayahuasca experiences with her. But if any of you guys come down here, we're still planning to have a retreat, if informally, next month, I guess. Probably not any later than that, because we've been told that once the rainy season really gets going, it's hell here. So we want to wrap it up before the rainy season and get up into the Andes. But if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. It'll include some visits to Juanita, who I think is probably got to be one of the best ayahuasqueros in the world. With that Shipibo lineage. Very, very powerful Iquitos. Yeah, and this, this hat's not... I could wear this, I guess. Macaws are huge, right? Look how big those feathers are. Well, I don't know, guys. You guys have to ask me stuff. That's what an AMA is. Without questions, I have no answers. Even with questions, I don't generally have answers, because there's more like possibilities. There's a big spectrum of possibilities. So going once, going twice. Probably wouldn't hurt my cold for me to just, get some rest and stop talking. All right. Well, then, in that case, don't forget to join Patreon. If you happen to be a billionaire and would like to fund some favorite musicians, that's a good question. But if you happen to be a billionaire and would like to fund some excellent videos, don't hesitate to send 27 Bitcoins to my wallet address. I just read about a guy that accidentally sent 27 Bitcoins to an imaginary address, and they're all just gone. Can you imagine? It's over $1 million. Favorite musicians, Jerry Garcia would be number 1. Phil Lesh is probably number 2. Fish, Tool, Ozzy Osbourne's one album, Blizzard of Oz, Black Sabbath, John Zorn, Mr. Bungle, Secret Chiefs 3, all that stuff. Amazing. Mr. Bungle. Echoes by Pink Floyd is, one of the all-time greatest songs. Flaming Lips. See, I said John Zorn. John Zorn, really, nowadays, John Zorn, man. If you haven't heard Inferno, that album is just... And also Horizons by the Secret Chiefs is sick. Book of Lucifer, the whole Book of Angels, all those different Book of Angels. The songs are basically like musical sigils. There's an evocation of Baphomet, actually. The Morning of the Magicians. It's all very like, not thelemic, but definitely like the Western occult tradition, sort of like avant-garde. But it's like, it can be like weird, ultra modern, like classical, and then just suddenly shift into like the most demonic death metal that you've ever heard, but with the rhythmic sophistication of like Frank Zappa or something. It's completely fucking crazy. Especially Secret Chiefs 3, probably. I would definitely, if you haven't heard that, definitely check it out. I don't care who you are, you're going to like it. Especially if you take psychedelics before you listen to it. Tom Waits, the album Blood Money and Rain Dogs, both of those are really good, especially Blood Money will always have a special place in my heart. Megadeth's Rust in Peace, but really none of the rest of it. Alice in Chains, that was really good band. Tool, Salival, a lot of people sleep on that one. The live version of Third Eye and the live version of Push It on there. Also Merkaba, if you ever eat mushrooms and are looking for something to listen to, Merkaba on Salival, definitely. And really, nobody has gone as far as like live Grateful Dead. That's still to this day the craziest shit that I've ever experienced. Solid dose of LSD and a peak Grateful Dead concert, second set, you're never going to be the same. Is it lagging bad? Really? Because we're holding the audience. Usually when it's laggy, the audience is gone. Just trying to check my internet speed. It's probably terrible. And once the jungle goes quiet out there, I'm doomed. Oh yeah, it's like 1. My internet speed is 1 right now. So, yeah, once the jungle goes silent, I know everybody's laying in their huts on their phones. Yeah, and any of the music that I recommend to you, definitely, it's always better to listen to it tripping, if possible. Always tripping. I feel like I missed some like really significant ones, but Guar, I always really loved Guar. Only America Must Be Destroyed, and This Toilet Earth. Also, Scumdogs of the Universe was decent, but America Must Be Destroyed, I think, is one of the greatest albums ever made. Also, George Clinton. A lot of people sleep on George Clinton. And George Clinton, one of the worst things, I think, that Babylon has ever done is what they did to George Clinton. Because he was kind of like the Black Jerry Garcia. You can find old concert footage of him, like, giving these rants and singing these lyrics that are just so inspirational and empowering to the black community. And he was full of LSD. And he got all strung out on crack and sold the rights to his music to Dr. Dre. And so they turned it into gangster rap and like ruined the world, basically. And, if that sounds prejudiced or unfair to you, go listen to what Ice Cube is saying right now. He's saying that the same people that own the record labels own the prisons, the private prisons. And that's why like they make music by committee. And they have these old white guys that are like, nah, man, make that shit more murdery and more crack dealing and, you know what I mean? Like glamorize all that shit harder. And we'll actually bring in lyricists for you to make sure, you know what I mean? Like they're funneling people into the private prisons using gangster rap as a mechanism for that, according to Ice Cube. And, he didn't know that when he was young. They were kids when they started, NWA and all of that other stuff. So they just didn't really realize the consequences of what they were doing. But yeah, George Clinton, they repurposed this super liberating, empowering music to, turn it into gangster rap and destroy Black America with it. Super fucked up. And actually one of my most incredible like synchronicity experiences happened with George Clinton. I was at it was just him. It was a George Clinton concert in Telluride, Colorado. And I was out in the audience and he came out and did this speech, this rant. It's like 12,000 feet there, and he was old and probably still strung out on crack. And he couldn't really, like, he would come out and, like, sweat real hard and rant a little bit and then go away again real soon. 'Cause, 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 And so one of those rants really got to me. I was like, damn, man, that was crazy. I'd really like to talk to that guy. I said this to my girlfriend, and I pulled this weed out of my pocket. And the second I pulled the weed out and opened it, a guy behind the fence was like, hey, you, come here. And I thought I was in trouble. And he goes, why don't you go up to George's room and give him some of that when he's done? And I was like, what? Like, I literally said to that's the timing of it. Like, it was like the speed was like, man, I would really like to talk to that guy. Pull my weed out, open it out. Hey, you, come here, go to George's dressing room. What? That's exactly what happened. And then I'm sitting there waiting for him, and the band comes in first, and like they're eating all the deli tray shit and pass him a bowl. Like, I didn't even say anything. I'm just like this weird white guy all of a sudden in this, backstage area with these huge, like, their bouncers were fucking massive, dude. The biggest black dude I've ever seen in my life, dude. He was like, seriously, the biggest I've ever seen in my life. And, George comes in and flops down in the chair between these two oxygen tanks. And I was like, hey, George. And he looks at me and he's like, hey, because I think in his like old senile mind, he thought I was like Dwayne Allman or someone that he had met in the 70s or whatever. And then he realized that, I would be like 40 years older or something. And the like big happy recognition kind of like faded from his face, and it just kind of went blank and stared at me. And I was like super uncomfortable, like this is not how I had imagined it going down in my head. I had thought that I would kind of be like, man, I guess I failed too. I failed to say, man, that was amazing. That rant was really inspirational. I didn't say anything. I just, the guy told me to give him the weed. So I was like, you want to hit this, George? He's like pouring sweat, and he's like, no. And then that giant black guy was like, you need to leave. And so I was out of there. But on my way out, things went way downhill, man. This story just, it's like the magic of synchronicity and then reality fucking hit me like a semi. And so he had two granddaughters, Sativa and I don't know the other girl's name, but they were rappers. And the taller, light-skinned one with an afro, I remember that much. She was a really good singer and stuff, and the other one was Sativa. She was not really, my cup of tea, I guess. And they both walked by me, and they're like, hey, you got that weed? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, all right, well, we'll come back to our dressing room. And I'm like, all right. So I go back there, and there's like all these giant black guys in there, and they're street, vibe hard. And they're basically trying to intimidate me into giving her the weed for free. And I'm thinking like, does George not pay you well enough or something? Like I was a construction worker at the time. It was $100. I'm like, I can't just give you this. Like maybe they thought they're celebrity. I don't know. But anyways, it didn't turn out all magical and beautiful, and it turned ghetto and kind of scary pretty quick. So I left. But still, man, that moment when I pulled out that weed and they sent me directly to his dressing room after saying I would really like to meet that guy. That obviously I'll never forget that. The rest of it, I could pretty much do without. Yeah, I mean, if you can get any of these people to agree to like talk to me, then fine, I'll talk. But like I said, maybe I just don't know what I'm doing, and I don't like contact people through the right channels or something. But I have only once ever gotten somebody to come on this channel, and it was Carlos Tanner from the Ayahuasca Foundation. And you know how I am, man, skeptical and rational and trying to reason through things. And I asked him, because he was saying that he came from, I kind of made him a little bit irritated, I think, because I just, I want to know the truth about stuff. And I'm not trying to be confrontational, but I don't know. But he was talking about how he was like a normal guy, normal, like white guy, you can tell. And he was saying that, he ayahuasca showed him that there was a spirit world and stuff. And I was like, well, how do you reconcile a belief in spirits with, like, do you actually think they're real? Like what happened? And his reason was that he had a vision of this uncle that had died a year before. And he said the reason he thought it was real is that he hadn't even been thinking about him. And I'm like, so you have this unresolved trauma and you take ayahuasca and you have a vision of him and you think because it's not on the forefront of your mind that it's a real spirit. That doesn't work for me. I'm not following, you know. And he definitely seemed to get kind of flustered, you know, by that. I can't help it, you know. I mean, I'm like, that reasoning doesn't stand up in my court, you know. I'm sorry, it just, you know, it doesn't. But I don't think that's why people don't come on. I don't know what it is. Maybe I don't know. I don't get it, man. I don't think I'm that weird, really. I mean, right now I'm wearing a Bora headdress and a woman's ceremonial thing. But, you know, I don't know. I think there's a lot of people out there I have really interesting conversations with. I tried to get Michael Levin. I knew that was dumb, that he wasn't gonna do that. That's crazy. This guy, Jonathan Chapin, that's my birth last name because my parents lied to me about who my dad was until I was 11. And then my mom set me down when she was dating this guy, Jeff Chapin. And she's like, who you thought was your daddy was nothing but while you were sitting home alone at age 14. That song was popular at the time too, I think. And so she's like, that, you know, the other Jeff isn't actually your dad. This Jeff is your dad. And so I found out I was a Chapin, just like Jonathan here. And I was actually kind of pleased with that because when I went to visit my grandfather, I didn't know he was my grandfather. I only met him once. They took me to this apartment on Christmas. And I did notice, like, why are all these people so weirdly interested in me? You know, like, I walk in a room and everyone's quiet and just looking at me and shit because they all knew that I was related to them and they'd never met me before. But I had no clue. No one told me until afterwards. So I'm just like, you know, I'm like 11 years old or something, old enough to notice, like, shit is not, something's weird, you know. And the old man, my grandfather, that I didn't know was my grandfather at the time, there was a picture of a Blackfoot. They hate it when you call him Blackfoot. Blackfeet. Blackfeet woman above the fireplace. And I asked him who that was. You know, why do you have this picture of this Native American woman on your fireplace? And he said, that's my wife. But she died of cancer 8 years ago. And she was taken from the reservation and put into one of those white reformatory schools, you know, to make the natives civilized or whatever, reformatories for Indians. And she was a piano prodigy. And so she became the first Native American woman to play Carnegie Hall. And of course, you know, music's always been really, really important to me. Also, the fact that she was a natural prodigy challenges the beliefs about prodigal players because it's believed that it has to be in your blood. And there was no white people in her blood until after she was born. Yeah, it is true, man, that they might see that I have 10,000 subs and then only 200 views on like a lot of videos and know that I'm shadow banned. And that's, yeah, you could be right. They don't want to interact with me because of that. That is a possibility for sure. It's really obvious. I might have fixed it today though. I don't know. I took some rehabilitation training for YouTube and they actually let me see the video. Where I said the misinformation, and that misinformation is now on the fucking WHO website. And they denied my appeal. So who is misinforming motherfuckers? That, you know, that is infuriating. It really is. It is literally, I can't say what they said that I said, I guess. You know, I don't want to stir the pot. But the thing I said that they said is misinformation is now listed on the WHO website as being factual. and they denied my appeal. Isn't that cute? It's really cute, right? Also, the shadow ban I have on Facebook that has seriously affected my ability to make, a living, has also been proven and admitted by Facebook that it wasn't misinformation. And have they reinstated my Instagram and my Facebook and taken the shadow ban off? They said your post will be placed lower in people's feed for 18 months or longer, and it's been like 2 years. They're not going to ever. It's lifelong, for sure. And now on TikTok, after I posted this video about how all the mainstream media is controlled by the same entity, my TikToks are going to 186 and stopping. 186 exactly. And then over the next couple of days they might trickle up to 200 or something. But this is an account with 57,000 followers. Stopping at the same number every video, and that's crazy to think that like all of these platforms are that heavily censored and controlled at this point. Yeah, I know. I need to find, other avenues for interacting with people. But I would like to just have some guests and have some interesting conversations on this channel. But like I said, nobody will talk to me. Your mate Tom was commenting, but then we had a tragedy at our events, and he disappeared, I think, because of that association. So... I don't know what to say about that. People are always telling me, go debate this person, go do that. I always reach out to them and they always ignore me. So. Bunch of bitches out there, man. Anyways, I'm getting tired of the lag myself, and it's 11 o'clock, and I got to meet with the Bora people in the morning and go hiking into the jungle. Probably getting torn to shreds by mosquitoes because it's the rainy season now. If you guys have any last minute questions, though, pop them into the chat before it's too late, and I will answer them. Do support the channel, you guys. I'll fucking delete it otherwise. Join my Patreon. The last 2 secret streams are really good. I did 2 tonight even because the first one was kind of short. We dropped below $600 a month again, so got to get back up. Need 17 more dollars in patrons to get back up to 600. So if 2 of you guys go and join the $10 tier, we will have made up that lost ground. Otherwise, you can make one-time contributions via PayPal and Zelle and whatnot, and know that your money is also supporting indigenous people that are severely impacted by this COV thingy. There's no tourism. There just isn't. So, also come to our event, and that also supports all of us. Really cheap too. If you share a room, we're talking like $500 a week. The private room's quite a bit more, but pretty affordable because it's kind of loud here for one thing, and also it's a shared room. But it's nice, man. We're in the jungle. There's a refuge down the street with monkeys and jaguars and all this kind of stuff, and pink dolphins in the river, and barely contacted people all around in the jungle and stuff. It's as real as it gets. It's just that even the Bora have Bluetooth speakers now, so you're not getting away from the womp. When did I notice my life change correlated with doing rituals? I don't know that I would say that really. It's more like, the headspace changes and the experience changes and the fluidity of certain types of experiences and the consistency changes. But my life went way down the rabbit hole way before I ever did any kind of rituals. And really the only ritual work that I do is a lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, and even then only if I feel a need to. And the middle pillar sometimes. But that's it. So thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Please hit the like button, share, subscribe, join us on Patreon to access our secret streams. If you know any creators that you think you would like to see me collaborate with, argue with, converse with, contact them and send them my links and see what they do. I don't know. And I'll see you guys probably Tuesday. Good night.